things you're dying to say or do right now that you feel like you can't?
No, I just make a choice of what matters to me and what's important to me. And that was a different time in 2016.
You know that saying, when someone tells you who they are, believe them? That's exactly where we're going today. Meghan has literally told us in her own words how she sees herself, and the media keeps spinning it into something else. But here's the hard truth. Silence isn't strategy and excuses aren't accountability. In this video, we're going to unpack why it's so dangerous to ignore someone's words just because we want to give them grace, and how that same mistake shows up in our relationships, our families, and even our workplaces. But before we begin, here's the intro. Welcome to Revealing the Narc. Join me as I highlight narcissistic traits in celebrities and public figures. Everything here is in my opinion and not professional advice. If you enjoy the analysis, please like and subscribe. The article we're going to talk about today really inflamed me. I had to talk about it, and you'll see why. So it's titled, Why Meghan Has Suddenly Been Silenced. Once a loud and proud social justice warrior, she's now, whisper it, quite boring. Experts say it's all part of a master plan. So the title already had me fuming, because right away it's setting up this narrative that Meghan isn't responsible for her own choices, that someone else must be controlling her. And honestly, it's giving me flashbacks to her time in the royal family when she kept saying she was silenced. The headline makes it sound like there's some sort of master plan at work, like she's not actually boring, she's just strategically holding back. And that angers me, because it's not accountability, it's an excuse. Instead of saying Meghan doesn't have much to say right now, which what I actually think is she simply doesn't care, the headlines are suggesting, oh no, this is all part of a bigger plan. And that's the problem, because this is exactly the kind of spin Meghan thrives on. If she's loud, she's a truth teller. If she's quiet, she's a strategist. Either way, she's never actually responsible for her own behavior. It's always framed as somebody else silencing her or some other PR move. But let's be real, silence isn't strategy. It's just emptiness. It's indifference. And yet the media still bends over backwards to make it look deliberate, to make it look noble. And that's why this headline annoyed me so much, because it's not just reporting, it's rewriting the narrative to protect her image. The article begins by saying Natalie Trice, who has spent 30 years advising clients about public relations and communications, senses a scaled back approach that feels like a deliberate shift, but maybe not one she has decided on. And Trice says that's a bit of a shame. What we get from these words is that Meghan isn't steering the ship, someone else is. This framing, of course, is protecting her because it turns passivity into a plan and removes her from being the one accountable. And I can't help but laugh with the very last part, that it's a bit of a shame, because the implication here is that Meghan has so many valuable things to say. It positions Meghan as an underappreciated voice of wisdom, as if the world is missing out by not hearing from her. The assumption is that she has these profound insights ready to share, and the only tragedy is that she's not being given the space to deliver them. Here's the nuance that I think gets lost. This type of commentary does two things at once. It shields Meghan from criticism, because if she's quiet, it's not her fault. And it elevates her, because if she's not speaking, it must be the world's loss. That combination is incredibly powerful for image management. She's protected from blame and praised for a depth we don't actually get to see. The article continues, asked in August whether there were any issues she was dying to weigh in on but couldn't, Meghan told Bloomberg, no, I just make a choice of what matters to me and what is important to me. She added, if there was anything I wanted to say or felt necessary to say, then I'd say it. I'm going to put that clip here so you can watch it.
What are things you're dying to say or do right now that you feel like you can't?
No, I just make a choice of what matters to me and what's important to me. And that was a different time in 2016, certainly. But no, I mean, what was that, the Larry Wilmore show?
Yes.
I was so excited to have that. I was so excited to be able to go on that show at the time.
What I just showed you was a little bit of an extension of what was in the very beginning of this video. And I wanted to put that in there because Megan deflects. Instead of answering the question immediately, she starts talking about the show that she was invited to speak on. And she actually said, I was so glad to have that. It kind of turned the entire event or situation into something that she is possessive over. To me, what I see is someone who is saying these words through gritted teeth. She's not happy about saying them, and I think she doesn't mean what she says. After that particular moment in the interview, the food that they had ordered came, so they were distracted from the conversation. So I clipped that part out and I wanted to show you the continuation of the conversation. Here it is.
I'll let you finish your answer.
Of course, it was a different time. I was excited to be on the show, and I think if there's anything that I wanted to say or that felt necessary to say, then I would say it. But that's not where I'm at right now. I don't think I haven't said anything since 2016. That was well before I met my husband, too. That's not where I'm at right now. I don't think I haven't said anything since 2016. That was well before I met my husband, too.
So again, you hear her reference about how she was excited to be on that show, and we heard it straight from her mouth. If there was anything she wanted to say, she'd be happy to say it. And then we see this exaggerated facial expression where she says, I haven't really said anything since 2016. This is another time where she's talking about how she was being silenced. She's referencing her time with the royal family, and at the same time, she contradicts that point by saying that she had stopped talking about it even before she met Harry. So, which is it? Was she silent or was she silenced? Based on this interview, it seems like she was just silent. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I want to continue this conversation by giving you some examples of how you may have experienced this in your own relationships. Before we get into it, though, I want to give you this overarching message to stop giving grace to the story you wish was true. Believe the one that they've already told you. There could be a partner who says, I don't want to work on this, or that's just who I am. Instead of hoping they'll change, you eventually realize they meant it. They weren't going to put in the effort. Or someone who insists, I don't want commitment, and then people give them the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe they'll come around. But the truth was they meant it. It could be a parent or a sibling who says, I don't apologize, or I'm not the type to talk about feelings. We sometimes hope they'll grow softer or more open, but their actions keep proving otherwise. It could be a relative who says, don't expect me to show up for you. And as painful as that is, they usually follow through and don't show up. You could have a friend who says, I'm just not good at keeping in touch. We tell ourselves, oh, but we've been friends forever. They'll make the effort. And yet months pass with no call or message, exactly like they warned. Another example is a friend who tells you, I'm always going to put myself first. You might brush it off at first, but then you notice that this person really does. In professional settings, it could be a boss who says, I'm not here to mentor anyone. Employees might have, and then this person's employees might hope for guidance anyway, but the boss never provides it. And finally, it could be a coworker who says, I don't do teamwork well. People think they'll improve when the project matters, but every time they prove that they meant it. The article continues, Trice said that Meghan's apparent pivot from meaty issues to soft-focused Instagram photos could be orchestrated by Netflix, which signed a deal to promote her shows and her lifestyle brand as ever. Let's pause. When someone constantly benefits from being portrayed as the puppet and never the puppeteer, it shields them from accountability while also inflating their importance. If Meghan is being directed by these big institutions, it makes her look like she's such a valuable commodity that powerful players are scripting her every move. That's not just an excuse. It's image elevation disguised as victimhood. And the irony, Meghan herself said in the Bloomberg interview that she doesn't feel silenced, that she'd speak if she wanted to. So if we take her at her word, this isn't about Netflix at all. It's about choice, which means the media narrative of her being managed is just another protective layer keeping her from having to answer the hard question. Why isn't she saying anything of substance? Let's dig deeper into this puppet and puppeteer narrative and relationship type. I'm going to give you a couple of examples that this might play out in your own life. So you can have a partner who always says, I do what my friends or family tell me to do, and avoids taking responsibility for decisions in the relationship. That way, if things go wrong, they can point to outside influence instead of owning it. Or it could be someone who blames every shift in behavior on an ex, a therapist, or even the universe instead of admitting they chose their actions. It could be a sibling who insists, Mom made me do it, even as an adult. They constantly lean on family pressure as the excuse for their choices. It could be a parent who deflects by saying, that's just how our culture or our family does it, rather than admitting they personally chose to act a certain way. In friendships, it might be someone who only joins in on drama by saying, well, so and so told me to say this, instead of using and owning their own words. It could be someone who claims, I didn't want to go along with it, but everyone else was doing it. They'd rather be the follower than take the heat for standing apart. And in a professional setting, it could be a coworker who says, I only did that because the boss said so, even if it was clearly their decision to cut corners or stir conflict. And finally, it could be an employee who claims that a client demanded a certain action when really they made a choice themselves, but hiding behind authority keeps them blameless. Let's finish out this article. It says, Eden Gillett, a PR specializing in crisis communication, agrees. She has a business brand to protect and a show built around friendship and joy that doesn't align with political hot takes, he claimed. By holding back, she is repositioning her voice to be more intentional, closer to the Michelle Obama model, where people lean in when she does choose to speak. Holding back is not a trait that many may associate with Meghan. This really, really also was inflammatory to me. And let me explain. So instead of being quiet because she has nothing to say, the spin is that she's repositioning her voice to be more intentional, modeling after Michelle Obama. The idea is that when she finally does speak, people will listen more closely. Now, let's call that what it is. It's grandiosity. This framing suggests that Meghan's silence isn't ordinary, it's tactical, that she's not avoiding substance. She's actually cultivating suspense, that when she eventually chooses to open her mouth, the whole world will be waiting with bated breath. The psychology here is fascinating because it's a perfect example of narcissistic self-importance. Ordinary silence becomes extraordinary. Not talking becomes a power move. And even in quiet, Meghan is positioning herself as someone whose voice is supposedly so valuable that the whole world will perk up the second she uses it. And here's the problem. When silence is constantly dressed up as strategy, there's no accountability. There's no room for the possibility that maybe she's not saying anything because she simply doesn't care. And instead, every absence gets reframed as brilliance, and this is where the manipulation is. Not every pause is wisdom. Sometimes it's just an empty silence dressed up as strategy. And let me give you a couple of examples that you may have experienced where someone has used silence as strategy. It could be a partner who withdraws during arguments and later claims, I was just waiting to make my point land stronger, when really they had nothing constructive to say. Or it could be someone who ghosts for days, then reappears like their silence was a powerful move you should respect. It could be a parent who stonewalls you at the dinner table and frames it as, I was teaching you a lesson, rather than admit that they were sulking. Or a sibling who refuses to weigh in on family decisions but later claims, I was just letting everyone realize how much my opinion matters. In a friendship, it could be someone who doesn't respond to texts or calls and then says, I wanted you to see how valuable my time is. Or someone who withholds support in group situations, then spins it as being above the drama, making silence look like superiority. And finally, in professional environments, it could be a boss who doesn't give feedback until the last minute and then claims, I wanted to see how you'd handle the pressure without me. Or a coworker who stays quiet in meetings but later says, I only speak when it's worth everyone's attention. When people inflate their silence into strategy, it's often just avoidance repackaged as importance. Let's close out this video with 3 red flag responses to protect yourself in these types of situations. The first is take their words at face value. If someone says, I'll only speak when I feel like it, or I don't apologize, believe them. Don't rewrite their script to fit the version of them you wish existed. Their words and actions are already telling you who they are. Don't fill in the gaps for them. When they stay silent, resist the urge to imagine depth or strategy behind it. Some people want others to project meaning onto their silence because it keeps them in control. Instead, judge them by what they actually do, not what you hope that they mean. And finally, set boundaries around the blame game. If every choice gets blamed on outside forces like my family, my boss, or the system, recognize that as deflection. You don't have to accept constant excuse making. Draw the line by saying, I hear what you're saying, but I need you to know that you have a choice in this. That puts accountability back where it belongs. So I'm curious to know what you all think about this. Please drop your thoughts in the comments. If this was interesting to you, please like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you'll know every time I drop a new video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you're looking for a meaningful way to support something beyond the screen, I'd love for you to consider making a donation to the National Domestic Violence Hotline in lieu of super chats and super stickers. They provide 24/7 support and resources for people in unsafe or overwhelming situations, whether that's emotional, physical, or just hard to name. Their information is on the screen should you need to contact them, and you'll find the link to donate in the description of this video. Every little bit helps, and it means a lot. Thank you again for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.